Yes. Let me look at Facebook. Oh, I see what happened. The Facebook was supposed to have started, and it didn't, and now it started. Okay. So, unlike MaryAnn, who got an experience that she talked about and gave you Bible references for it, I am more going to talk about stuff that I study. And if I had a paper Bible, I use a electronic Bible, but if I had a paper Bible, 3 chapters would be worn, and that would be the book of Matthew and Genesis 1 and 2. Those are the books I always go back to. Okay, so tonight I want to talk about Genesis 1 and 2. And I think they're short enough that I could read them, though we're all very familiar with it. But let me read it. Now I'm going to read out of the NIV as it having a... MaryAnn, are you all right? Okay. Having a more modern English translation. So Genesis 1 goes, in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. Now the earth was formless and empty. Darkness was over the surface of the deep, and the Spirit of God was hovering over the waters. And then we go into the days. Okay, so, and God said, let there be light, and there was light. God saw the light was good, and he separated the light from the darkness. God called the light day, and the darkness he called night. And there was evening, and there was morning the first day. And God said, let there be a vault between the waters to separate the water from the water. So God made the vault and separated the water under the vault from the water above it. And it was so. God called the vault sky. And there was evening and there was morning the second day. And God said, let the water under the sky be gathered to one place, and let dry ground appear, and it was so. God called the dry ground land, and the gathered waters he called seas, and God saw that it was good. Then God said, let the land produce vegetation, seed-bearing plants, and trees on the land that bear fruit, with seed in it according to their various kinds. And it was so. The land produced vegetation, plants bearing seed according to their kinds, and trees bearing fruit with seed in it according to their kinds. And God saw that it was good, and there was evening and there was morning the third day. And God said, let there be lights in the vault of the sky to separate the day from the night, and let them serve as signs to mark sacred times and days and years. And let the lights in the vault of the sky give light up on the earth. And it was so. God made 2 great lights, the greater light to govern the day, and the lesser light to govern the night. He also made the stars. God set them in the vault of the sky to give light on the earth, to govern the day and the night, and to separate light from darkness. And God saw it was good. And there was evening and there was morning the fourth day. And God said, let the water teem with living creatures, and let birds fly above the earth across the vault of the sky. So God created the great creatures of the sea and every living thing in which the water teems and that moves about in it, according to their kinds, and every winged bird according to its kind. And God saw that it was good. God blessed them and said, be fruitful and increase in number, and fill the water and the seas, and let the birds increase on the earth. And there was evening and there was morning the fifth day. And God said, let the land produce living creatures, according to their kinds, the livestock, the creatures that move along the ground, and the wild animals, each according to its kind. And it was so. God made the wild animals according to their kinds, and the livestock according to their kinds, and all the creatures that move along the ground according to their kinds. And God saw it was good. Then God said, let us make mankind in our image, in our likeness, so that they may rule over the fish in the sea and the birds in the sky, over the livestock and all the wild animals, and over all the creatures that move along the ground. So God created mankind in his own image. In the image of God he created them. Male and female he created them. And God blessed them and said to them, be fruitful and increase in number, fill the earth and subdue it. Rule over the fish in the sea and the birds in the sky, and over every living creature that moves on the ground. Then God said, I give you every seed-bearing plant on the face of the whole earth, and every tree that has fruit with seed in it. They will be your food, and to all the beasts of the earth, and all the birds in the sky, and all the creatures that move along the ground, everything that has the breath of life in it, I give every green plant for food. And it was so. God saw all that he had made, and it was very good. And there was evening and morning. There was morning the sixth day. Now, the chapter ends there, but it doesn't really end there. So we go over to chapter 2, and chapter 1 really continues here. So the chapter break is in a weird place. Thus the heavens and the earth were completed in all their vast array. By the seventh day, God had finished the work he had been doing. So on the seventh day, he rested from all his work. Then God blessed the seventh day and made it holy, because on it he rested from all the work of creating that he had done. So that's what people call the first creation story. So there's Genesis 1, all right? Now, Genesis 2 appears to be another version or another rendition of God creating. So let's look at it. This is the account of the heavens and the earth when they were created. Now it says the Lord God made the earth and the heavens, but I'm going to say Jehovah to make it more authentic. So Jehovah is not actually the way to pronounce it, but that's what it says in the Hebrew text. It says his name, not a title. So Jehovah made the earth and the heavens. Now, no shrub had yet been prepared on the earth, and no plant had yet sprung up, for Jehovah had not sent rain onto the earth, and there was no one to work the ground, but streams came up from the earth and watered the whole surface of the ground. Then Jehovah formed a man from the dust of the ground and breathed into his nostrils the breath of life, and the man became a living being. Now Jehovah had planted a garden in the east and in Eden, and there he put the man he had formed. Jehovah made all kinds of trees grow out of the ground, trees that were pleasing to the eye and good for food, in the middle of the garden, where the tree of life and the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. A river watering the garden flowed from Eden. From there it was separated into 4 headwaters. The name of the first is Pishon. It winds through the entire land of Havilah, where there is gold. The gold of that land is good aromatic resin, and onyx are also there. Okay. It doesn't say that in this version, but that's okay. The name of the second river is the Gihon. It winds through the entire land of Cush. The name of the third river is the Tigris. It runs along the east of Ashur, and the fourth river is the Euphrates. Jehovah took the man and put him in the Garden of Eden to work it and take care of it. And the Lord God, or Jehovah, commanded the man, "You are free to eat from any tree in the garden, but you must not eat from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, for when you eat from it, you will certainly die." Jehovah said, "It is not good for the man to be alone. I will make a helper suitable for him." Now, Jehovah had formed out of the ground all the wild animals and all the birds in the sky. He brought them to the man to see what he would name them, and whatever the man called each living creature, that was its name. So the man gave names to all the livestock, the birds in the sky, and all the wild animals. But for Adam, no suitable helper was found. So the Lord Jehovah caused the man to fall into a deep sleep, and while he was sleeping, he took one of the man's ribs and closed up the place with flesh. Then, by the way, sometimes that's translated as side. He took a side from him. Jehovah made a woman from the rib he had taken out of the man, and he brought her to the man. The man said, "Now, this is now bone of my bones, flesh of my flesh. She should be called woman, for she is taken out of man. That is why a man leaves his father and mother and is united with his wife, and they become one flesh." Adam and his wife were both naked, and they felt no shame. Now, what I want to say about it is Genesis 1 and 2 are not the same. And what they also are not is, apparently, they're not a step-by-step guide. This is how you create a universe. So what it more is in both cases in Genesis 1 and 2 is they are giving an order. Okay, so they're not giving a specific order because the two chapters have different orders for the creation of things. Now, people that hate God will jump on that and say, see, the Bible's no good because they contradict each other. But that's a mean interpretation of what's going on. See, a more favorable interpretation is that, well, we need to be. I was told once when I was a new Christian by a Christian friend, he says, "I know that you're the kind of person that will take the Bible seriously, not literally. So if we take it literally, we have a problem, and it's difficult to actually imagine taking Genesis 1 and 2 literally. But we can take it seriously and try to understand what it's trying to tell us. And trying to get to a point here, what it's trying to tell us is not the specific order that things were created, but that God created the universe. And God created Adam and Eve and mankind. And that it was orderly. See, so they're showing an order, and the point of that is to show it's orderly and not chaotic, because we do have, if you go into, atheists like scientism, that it was all chaos, and everything was created out of random events. And the Bible is definitely saying, no, that's not what happened. What happened was it was orderly. And it wasn't just orderly, it was under control. So at every step, there was a step, and God controlled the step. He says, let this happen, and that thing happened. It was under God's control. It wasn't by random chance. So what I actually get from the fact that they're different in order is that it lets me know that the main message is it's orderly, not the order. So, now, what's the other difference between the two chapters is what they're focused on. Oh, here's another thing. The chapters are not written as, I don't know how to say it, like thus saith the Lord, like the Lord speaking. It's written as a human narrator describing what God did. So it's coming through a human, through and to a human mind. Okay? So, what's different between the two, other than order, is that their focus is different. They're talking about two different things. Genesis 1 is talking about the creation of the entire universe, and on day 6, the creation of the universe culminates in the creation of mankind. But note that the word used is mankind, not Adam, not man. It's mankind, and that he created men and women. So, whereas the chapter 2 is not about the creation of the universe, because it leaves out all the stuff about making light and the stars, and it talks about the making of a garden. So chapter 2 is really a story or a telling of God creating the Garden of Eden and populating it with created vegetation and created animals and a created single human being and then another human being, but a single human being. So there's a big difference between 1 and 2 in that respect. So I have to ponder, are these to be viewed as even the same event? They both say they happened in the beginning, but they're both talking about really two different things. And so there's a lot of different views on creation that are not literal. So whereas if you take the literal way to go, you got one, a problem because of the two stories differ, and number two, you got problems because even within like Genesis 1, it's you can't take it strictly literally, okay? And the reason being, if you talk to or listen to scholars, and I'm not talking about atheist scholars, though we have atheist biblical scholars. I'm talking about believer scholars, and they view it as written poetry. So if you read it in Hebrew, it comes across as poetry, and it comes across with metaphors and non-literal things. One thing that underscored it for me is I'm a backyard astronomer. So, and I'm also trained in science, so I can't take the young Earth creationist view that the Earth is only 6,000 years old, because if you look at the Earth, it appears to be much older than that. But let's say just start with I'm an astronomer. And if I look at the section about creating the great lights, the greater light and the lesser light, I can't take that strictly literally, because it's not the case. It's obviously not the case that the moon rules the night. It doesn't, I mean, most nights the moon is partial, and for several nights it's not even up at night. So I can't say that God was talking about the moon. Maybe he was talking about some other lesser light that we don't see anymore. That's what some people, the extent that some people go to. It was some other light that's gone. But it can't be the moon strictly literally, because it doesn't rule the night. Yeah, the sun rules the day, except for when the moon overrules it, right? So sometimes the moon blocks the sun. But so we could say, yeah, the sun rules the day, but the moon does not rule the night. It just, if it did, I mean, as an astronomer, in a way, I look forward to the nights where there's no moon because it's too bright, and it's not ruling the night. If it was, then it would block all my other viewing, okay? So that's one thing there. So there's a lot of views now. If you take what we know about factual things, like there's fossils, and there appear to be hominid fossils. Now, I'm not going to say that evolution is all correct and that we evolved, because it doesn't appear that way. Even loosely reading Genesis, it doesn't sound like there's an implication that we evolved from primates. It doesn't sound that way. It sounds like we were created. There's a lot of views, though, trying to reconcile science and Genesis 1 and 2, and we have something that's called the gap theory, where we just take Genesis 1:1 and say between Genesis 1:1 and Genesis 1:2, there's millions of years. There's time for all this stuff to occur, and so it's just left out of the narrative. I don't really go for that, but what I am thinking more about is that there were two different events. God created the universe, he created people, and then subsequently created Adam and Eve. Now, can I do that? Because it needs, so we will call that two separate events that happened in the beginning, but there's a time elapse between creating mankind and creating Adam and Eve, and the question is, can I do that and keep it not contradicting the rest of the Bible? And if you look at the rest of the Bible, when it talks about Adam, it's like he's the first, but he's the first Adam, and he was created in the beginning. And Adam and Eve, if you look in Matthew, it's like Adam and Eve. Well, this is why we have since the beginning a man and a wife come together. So that still doesn't contradict that it was two events. And also, because of the flood, which there may be evidence for. I mean, they show evidence for a worldwide flood, and there's so many stories about it. Because of the flood, we literally are all tracing our roots back to just Adam. So as far as our human line goes, Adam's the beginning of the line. So it seems like it's still consistent that you could say that there were two events that were separated by some amount of time occurring in the beginning. And so that's really what came here to talk about, and that is that possible? It seems to solve certain problems with reconciling Genesis 1 and 2 and physical facts, because it allows for them to have been a period of time where there were humans or human-like things that died off and then became fossilized. So I don't know if that was all of a great thing to talk on, but it is the kind of things that I think about. Like when I was first a Christian, I was trying to be a young earth creationist. And you can flip a switch and say, I am going to believe that, but you can only do that long enough until you've got something in your face that says, yeah, that can't really be. And in my case, what that was I took a trip to Washington, D.C. And on this trip to Washington, D.C., I went through we call them mountains. They're not as tall as the western mountains, but we call them mountains. And in some cases, the road is cut through. So they tend to go around in the valleys, but sometimes they have to cut off part of the mountain to put the road through. And when they cut off part of the mountain, you see the geology of the mountain. It just gets all exposed. And so all those tall mountains or hills in the south on the way to Pennsylvania and through it are made up of sedimentary layers. So, that just stares you in the face and says, well, here's all these sedimentary layers. And from what we know about how sediment builds up now, it takes a year to make a layer. And if you look at how high those mountains are, there's thousands upon thousands of layers, more than 6,000. Okay, so if you look at from the road, you can see, yeah, there's more than 6,000 years worth of layers here. And so, that's when I had to reevaluate just thinking that the young earth creationists were right. Okay? So those two things, seeing that the earth is actually pretty old, and that, as best I can tell, Genesis 1 is metaphor and poetry.
He does it in a day.
He doesn't, yeah, so that's what some people bring up, is a young earth creationist will say those are literal 24-hour days. But we don't use day that strictly in our own time. We say, back in the day when I was going to school, and we're not talking about a 24-hour period, we're talking about a period of time. So the first day could mean the first, really it's talking about the first orderly step that was taken, and it took a period of time. Since it says day, we know it has something to do with time. But it's not just that. It's not just that it uses the word day. It's that if you look at the way it's written, It ends, it's got this rhythm to it. There was evening and morning the first day, there was evening and morning the next day, etc. That is considered a poetic format. Anyways, that's really what I had all to say. So, was it? So I think we're going to close. Oh, we should take an offering, and I'll do mine later.
Yeah, we should give an offering to us.
But we should give an offering. So for the people on Facebook, there's many ways to give to SOG Church, and it's probably in the description, or you can find it on Susan O'Mara's page. There's Givelify, which is what we use, and there's, I think she says Cash App, and there's PayPal, and there's multiple ways to give an offering to the Salvation of God Church, and I encourage people to do that. Okay, so we're done.